In 1865, the American Civil War ended with the victory of the abolitionist states. The 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution. It marked the abolition of slavery and, unfortunately, the beginning of segregation.
Indeed, the same year, the Ku Klux Klan was founded. It's an illegal organization promoting the supremacy of the white race. They organized cross-burning, hangings, and a lot of dreadful action to reject and threaten black population.
Then, between 1896 and 1950, black Americans knew a dark period because of the so-called Jim Crow laws. Originally, in the early 19th century, Jim Crow was a fictional character of a minstrel show which made fun of black slaves.
Official Jim Crow laws did the same. They discriminated and isolated African Americans, considering them as inferior. The legal principle was separate but equal. Thus, segregation became constitutional and the black population was ostracized.
For example, a black man couldn't get married with a white woman, or black people were not allowed to enter in white restaurants. However, in 1909, black people began to fight for their civil rights. They created the NAACP.
Its mission was to make sure that all Americans, white and black, were on an equal footing, and at that time, it was a very hard task.
Consequently, during the following years, some facts occurred which proved that there were actual advancement of the condition of black persons. A key example is Jackie Robinson. In 1947, he became the first African-American baseball player to play in professional Major League Baseball.
It put an end to racial segregation in professional baseball, which since 1880 had stuck black players in so-called Negro Leagues.
One of the most striking moments of black rebellion against the racist system was the 1st December of 1955, when Rosa Parks was arrested. She didn't take segregation for guaranteed and refused to give her seat to a white person in the bus, although the driver threatened to call the police. This arrest touched the hearts of African Americans, and that's why they started a bus boycott for 13 months in Montgomery, Alabama. It was a major civil rights action which was led by MLK and resulted in a Supreme Court deciding that segregation on public buses was now unconstitutional.
In 1963, the biggest civil rights action took place with a march in Washington which brought together 300,000 persons. In addition, the leader of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, pronounced the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, which claimed for a non-violent fight for equality. Because of his countless action, he became in 1964 the youngest man to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. It showed that his actions were powerful and admired worldwide.
So here we are in 1968 when a lot of key events about civil rights took place. First, the upsetting assassination of Martin Luther King in April in Memphis by a man called James Earl Ray, who was probably part of a racist conspiracy. This tragedy was followed in June by the assassination of the presidential candidate Robert Kennedy in Los Angeles, who was a strong supporter of anti-discrimination legislation. This tragic event took place during the controversial Vietnam War and the death of thousands of US soldiers.
Later in October, a crucial event occurred during the Mexico City Olympics Games. US athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who had won the gold and the bronze medal at the 200-meter race, made a symbolic gesture during the podium ceremony to highlight that human rights were baffled.
They wore black socks without shoes and civil rights badges. They raised their black gloved fist while the USA national anthem was playing to show solidarity with the black freedom movement in the United States. However, they paid a high price for their protests and they were banned from the US team and from the games. So this is the end of the timeline and the civil rights movement, but we know that current laws are not completely fairly enforced and the black population is still victim of racism in the US.
The KKK still exists and racial tensions remain. Nevertheless, civil rights campaigns keep up the fight, like hashtag Black Lives Matter and hashtag I Can't Breathe in 2014 against the violence of the police on black population.